Hello everyone, welcome to the Hindu analysis for 3rd February 2021. Let us get into the first article. Police use barbed wire spikes, trenches to cut off protest site. Since past few days, the Delhi police have taken proactive measures to prevent a repeat of violence that has happened on the 26th of January, that is Republic Day, where protesters, or at least a small faction of protesters, broke out from the tractor rally and went on a rampage on streets of Delhi and raised flags on Red Fort. So to prevent a repeat of that day, the Delhi police seems to have taken some proactive measures. So what has happened here is the police had dug up the roads leading to the protest site. They have placed the concrete barriers, they had poured concrete, they had placed spikes in those concrete, and they had installed barbed wire from the access points surrounding the access points to the protest site in the Delhi border. And not only that, they have stopped allowing both journalists and volunteers into entering the protest site. This has led to a very tense situation in the border area, where both the protesters are dug in themselves and the police are also have their own criteria to prevent any further rupture or violence. Coming to the next article, Amazon wins relief as High Court stays future Reliance deal. So, to a little bit of precursor to what is going on between Amazon and Future Group and Reliance Group's merger is, in 2019, Amazon acquired a certain percentage of stake in Future Group. During that deal, Amazon had made an agreement with the Future Group stating that if and when in the near future, if the Future Group wants to sell its asset, Amazon will get the first chance to buy those assets. Meaning, the Future Group must approach Amazon saying that, "Bhai, we are trying to sell our company, will you buy it or not?" If the Amazon Group says no, then Future Group can go outside the agreement and sell it to some other company. So what happened here is, instead of asking Amazon whether they are interested in buying the assets of Future Group or not, Future Group went ahead and sold its asset to Reliance Group directly without any say-how of the Amazon agreement that they had made earlier. So again, coming back to the history, in August of 2020, Future Group announces that it had agreed to sell businesses including its retail and wholesale operations to Reliance Retail or Retail. So as a result of this, Amazon seeks legal recourse because they filed a petition in. Here we have the interesting point. They have went and filed a case in the Singapore International Arbitration Center against Future Group and Reliance Group's agreement. So what is the Singapore International Arbitration Center? So it is a non-profit, not-for-profit or non-profit international arbitration organization based in Singapore, which administer arbitrations under its own rules of arbitration and the United Nations Commissions on International Trade Law rules. So it is an independent body, it is a non-government body, it is a not-for-profit body, meaning whatever they are doing is, to a certain extent, is not for profit. They are not looking for getting profits out of what they are doing here. Why do companies or international companies trust this Singapore Arbitration Center or court? Because since its inception, they have maintained a golden standard. Singapore Arbitration Center gave any decision or a judgment, those judgments were always based on facts and they were never biased in nature, because they strongly believed in rule of law, and whatever the trade rules that were set by the United Nations Commission on International Trade Law were followed to the letter. So that's why international companies trust the Singapore Arbitration Center for recourse or legal recourse instead of local governments or local courts. That is why they trust it. So Amazon Group approached the Singapore Arbitration Center. gave a stay on the future Reliance deal. But the future Reliance companies, both the companies said that we no longer believe or we cannot follow the judgment given by the Singapore Arbitration Center, to which the Amazon approached, particularly the Delhi High Court, to provide an interim relief to Amazon. Meaning, there is this already an arbitration going on there, and the judgment is in favor of us. This is Amazon is saying to the Delhi High Court, but the Future and Reliance Group is still going ahead with the merger of assets of Future Group into the retail arm of Reliance. Please stop it. That is what the Amazon said to the Delhi High Court. Now the Delhi High Court came out and said that whatever the decision given by the Singapore Arbitration Center stands, meaning it has put a stop to the merger of Future and Reliance groups, meaning the Future Group into the Reliance retail arm particularly. The judgment is of significance because the Delhi High Court identifies or agrees with the arbitration order given by the Singapore Arbitration Center, meaning it recognizes the arbitration center decision. Now, the second thing is it gives an interim relief to the Amazon to approach further legal procedures or legal recourse. So coming back to this arbitration center, you might get a doubt. Doesn't India have such arbitration centers in India? We do have one in Mumbai, which is also an international of international stature, but it is not as well evolved or implemented as that of the Singapore one, because Singapore one has been established long back, and almost all Fortune 500 companies, big and small, trust Singapore Arbitration Center because of its past history. We are still trying to develop our own arbitration center in Mumbai. Again, does India use the Singapore Arbitration Center? Yes, we do use Singapore Arbitration Center. We are the highest user of the Singapore Arbitration Center. We have almost 485 cases that are being referred or discussed or tried at the Arbitration Center of Singapore, according to 2019 statistics. Coming to the next article, it's goodbye to fiscal orthodoxy. So, Budget 2021 is a key departure from a key tenet of Washington censuses, that is macroeconomic stability. Macroeconomic stability talks about the economic health or economic stability of a nation as a whole, not of individual sectors. Macroeconomics means on the whole, meaning the whole nation economy is being talked about here. According to the current budget, seems to be of the nature of more borrowing and more spending. Generally, whenever we are being presented budget for any fiscal year, the government always tries to ensure a balance between spending and fiscal deficit, meaning the government, in order to spend some money, must make some money back. So fiscal deficit is the situation where the money that is being spent is far greater than the money that is being made back through taxes, direct or indirect, or through other means or ways. So whenever a budget is being presented every year for the past few decades or so, the government always tries to maintain a balance. So the government clearly stated that its intent by showing a fiscal indiscipline, meaning we are not going to play by the rules anymore, because coronavirus pandemic changed most of the things and most of the way that an economy functions or operates. So we are also going to change few orthodox stances that we have been taken since past. So as a result, the government came out with certain policies where they are going to implement more borrowing, in a sense that we are going to take out loans or we are going to spend some money into certain areas which we never used to spend earlier, and we are also going for privatization and FDIs. So the government has increased duties on some imports in order to protect and foster domestic industry. So two things. One is we are going to borrow more. We are going to try to nurture domestic industry by increasing levy or duty on imports. That is the two things that we can understand from here. Coming to the next point, introduced performance linked incentives for designated sectors, something that goes counter to market economics. If you remember yesterday's summary of budget, we talked about a scheme called PLI, production linked scheme, where if you come out with certain production strategies, or if you start a production line in India, the government is going to give some incentives to you. Production linked incentive scheme, PLI scheme. And we talked about 13 sectors to which the PLI applies. The same thing, the government is boosting the PLI scheme and giving more money than what it used to give earlier. But along with this unorthodox stance, the government is, however, happy to adhere to old elements of market unorthodoxy, such as privatization and a greater role for foreign direct investment. The earlier unorthodoxy that we talked about is the disregard for fiscal deficit. Despite a high number of fiscal deficit, we are going for extra borrowing so that we can reignite the economy. Earlier the stance was we have to be careful of our fiscal deficit and always curtailed our borrowing from the external sources. This year, due to coronavirus pandemic, the government broke its stance and said that we know there is a risk that our fiscal deficit numbers are going to shoot up, which is bad for India as a whole, but at this unprecedented times we are going for more borrowing and spending little bit recklessly. That is what the orthodoxy stance used to be. That is the unorthodox stance that the current budget stays out. But in general, the Washington census, meaning the global economy always runs on the principle of privatization and greater role for foreign direct investment. So what are the additional changes that were brought in through this unorthodox stance, or the change of stance from the budget presentation as a whole? The one interesting point here is the document that is released every year called the medium term fiscal policy cum fiscal strategy statement. So this statement is released every year or presented along with the budget in the budget every year, and these documents or statements carry data in which the government will express the past 2 years expenditure, fiscal deficit, fiscal responsibility, and also project the next 2 years fiscal responsibilities and all the data related to the economy of the country. But this year this document only talks about the current year alone. So as I said earlier, in previous years the document would give the indicators for the past 2 years as well as the projection for the next 2 years. This year the government did not do that. The finance ministry came out and just gave a commitment to lower the fiscal deficit to 4.5% of the GDP by 2025 to 26. That is the new norm that is being set by the finance ministry here. And what is the direct result of this? Pretense of attaining the deficit target set out in the Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management FRMB Act of 2003 is gone now. Whatever the budget this time was presented is the true budget in the sense that no numbers were fudged or misled. Every year government does some magic mathematics and brings out positive numbers, but this year the central government directly realized and came out with true numbers without any false numbers or false positives. So in this budget the pretense goes out of the window. The finance ministry has promised to introduce an amendment to the FRMB Act to formalize the new target. Every year the government or the finance ministry comes out with numbers which nobody in the industry trusts, because they know some magic is being done here to project a positive growth rate. But this year they came out with true numbers and promised that whatever the numbers that we are projecting here, we are going to pass it out as an amendment in the FRMB, that is Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. So the budget marks an important departure from one of the key tenets of the Washington Census. What is this Washington Census that we have been talking about? The Washington Census is a set of 10 economic policy prescriptions by Washington DC based institutions such as International Monetary Fund, World Bank and United States Department of Treasury. That is what Washington Census means, because these every year or most of these policies that India drives on or conducts its business upon are based on these institutions, that is International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. To that effect, in order to showcase the change that the government is going to take or make in its economic policy, the economic survey that preceded the budget laid out the groundwork for departure from the rigid adherence to fiscal consolidation. So, the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, both flag bearers of the Washington Consensus, have been urging a departure from fiscal orthodoxy in the wake of pandemic. Even the Washington Census organizations have also been saying to countries that please don't follow what you have been doing earlier. Come out of old methods or methodologies, because the coronavirus pandemic is new and unprecedented. Whatever you have been doing earlier will no longer work during coronavirus pandemic, and you have to formulate new policies to address new challenges, is what these organizations were trying to say. And to a greater extent or to a certain extent, the government of India seems to be following those suggestions here. So what are the concerns here? What are the main concerns that the new methodology or the stand that the government has taken here will lead up to? The concerns are of twofold. One is a large fiscal deficit can fuel a rise in inflation. As things stand due to coronavirus, India cannot no longer afford an increase in the percentage of inflation. And the only agency that can control inflation in India is Reserve Bank of India. But if you have been following the news lately, there hasn't been any statements or documents or released by the RBI regarding inflation. So whenever the Finance Ministry and the Ministry of Finance comes out and says we are going to ensure that the inflation number stays below 4% or between 4 and 5%, and the agency that is interested with controlling inflation, that is RBI, stays silent, it is a cause of concern, because it shows that either there is a communication lack of communication between RBI and Finance Ministry, or they both have different opinions and the Finance Ministry got its way. So that is where most of the concerns come in regards to inflation. If the inflation increases, already people are struggling to meet their needs because lack of whatever the money that they are earning might not be sufficient, and inflation increases, it will put a large scale burden on the lower middle class and the middle class and the below poverty line, that is the poor population of our country. So with the tax to GDP ratio not rising as expected, this is the second cause of concern, the sale of public assets. If you remember what I was talking about earlier, the government needs to make money. They make money by way of taxes, both direct and indirect, and other means and methods. The other means and methods, among those, one is sale of its assets. So public assets has to be sold to private companies or to interested parties to earn money to spend on our budget. So the sale of public assets has become crucial to reduction in fiscal deficit in the years ahead. Whatever we are going to talk about in the next coming budgets, sale of public assets is an integral part of it, because in order to make back some money or in order to earn some money without putting burden on the common people through taxation, the government must sell its assets. So what are the pitfalls of it? Large scale privatization is not easily accomplished in India. In 2018, the government came out and said that we are going to sell Air India. This is 2021. Still, the sale of Air India is going on and nothing has been finalized yet. 2018, 2021. See the gap. In India, everything will take time, and particularly sale of government assets will take double the time what it takes naturally. So, selling public assets cheap is politically contentious because it's a political bullet that nobody is willing to bite. So again, the another pitfall of privatization is job losses from privatization are bound to evoke a backlash. Nobody expects unemployment, nobody wishes unemployment, and when job loss is seen due to privatization, there is bound to be backlash from the people who are losing job and people who are dependent on it, and in general from the public as a whole, because unemployment is never acceptable by the public. Moreover, large-scale privatization almost always involves substantial FDI. So whenever we talk about privatizations, sometimes Indian companies cannot afford to buy the product or cannot afford to buy the asset as a whole, so they need to bring FDI investment from outside. But here we are trying to improve the ethos of Atmanirbhar Bharat, that is less dependency on foreign investments or foreign companies, and building our own assets and building our own capabilities. So this is where the conflict of interest come when we talk about large scale privatization and large scale domestic growth or Atmanirbhar initiative. That is what we need to consider here. Coming to the next article, robust stance led to stability at border. Our defense minister has said that, but our important point in this article is the Cabinet Committee on Security, that is CCS, has approved the manufacture of 83 light combat aircraft jets. This includes 73 LCA Tejas Mk1A fighter aircraft and 10 LCA Tejas Mk1 trainer aircraft at a cost of 45,696 crores. The government is going to sign an agreement with Hindustan Aeronautical Limited today at Aero India 2021 for the purchase of 83 light combat aircraft Tejas fighter jets. So out of which 73 are going to be the fighter jets, 10 are going to be the trainer aircraft of Mk1 variant. So the agreement will be signed today. This will act as a shot in the arm for Atmanirbhar initiative and will put certain rumors or certain accusations against the LAC to rest, because there has been a lot of questions on the quality of Tejas, because again it is being produced in India and all the research and development was done in-house in India. So naturally people started questioning it and accusing the government of not buying those jets. With this agreement between the government of India and HAL for 83 jets, we can surely say that the trust in the aircraft will increase definitely. Coming to the next article, social media issues are concern center. In this article we are only concerned about two things. One is the central government saying to the courts that social media or the control of social media is a central domain. The state governments have no say in how policy is formulated or how social media companies operate, and rules that are framed for the operation of social media concerns. It is a clear-cut case of central government drawing the line, stating that this is a central government subject. State governments do not get involved. You have no right to say what the social media companies or what the policies regarding the social media companies should say or should do or should follow. This comes regarding a case filed by a person, Mr. Mohan, who works for Facebook, regarding his claim for right to silence. So he has argued that he was well within his rights to remain silent and not be compelled by the Peace and Harmony Committee to be part of politically polarized debate. So the precursor to this is the Delhi government formed a committee called the Peace and Harmony Committee to investigate the Delhi riots. As a part of investigation, the committee observed that the social media giants like Twitter and Facebook played a vital role in spreading information and misinformation. In order to give its clarification to the committee asked Facebook's representative to appear before the committee. The person who was responsible for the operations of Facebook in India approached the Supreme Court by saying that, like right to freedom and right to free expression, he has also the right to silence, and he expressed that he cannot be used as a pawn in politically motivated scenarios. That is what we have to understand. One is the central government clearly saying that social media domain is ours, you cannot formulate or you cannot get into this. Two, like right to freedom and right to express, we also have a right to silence. Two things. Coming to the next article, awareness campaign planned to dispel rumors on NPR and census. So yesterday, the Ministry of Home Affairs, which is entrusted with the implementation of census in India, as you are aware, the census has been postponed to 2022 due to coronavirus pandemic. It was postponed from 2019 to 2020. Now, due to vaccination drive, it is being again postponed to 2022. The Ministry of Home Affairs came out and said to the Parliamentary Affairs Committee that a 360-degree approach for the communication and the right and clear message approach for communicating the right and clear message on the NPR has been planned to be followed. All kinds of media, that is social media, audiovisual media, digital and outdoor, print, word of mouth, publicity tools are part of planned media strategy, and they assured that right kind of messaging will be done to tackle miscommunication and rumors around NPR and census 2011. Whatever the protests happened against NCR and NPR, most of it was due to miscommunication or misunderstanding of the clauses involved in the CAA bill. So the Ministry of Home Affairs came out and said that we are building a comprehensive strategy to address all these measures. They said it to a Parliament Affairs Committee. Coming to the next article, MHA gets further extension till April 9 to frame CAA rules. So the Ministry of Home Affairs again informed the Lok Sabha on Tuesday that a parliamentary committee on subordinate legislation had granted it extension till April 9 to frame the CAA 2019 rules. Till now, CAA rules haven't been formulated. Without those rules formulated, the CAA or NRC or NPR cannot be implemented. Without rules, nothing can be implemented. As far as everything regarding the Citizenship Amendment Act and NRC, everything is on hold because there are no rules to follow or adhere to. These have to be formulated. The committee, but the MHA has been laxed, or you can accuse them of being lazy or something like that. But for whatever reason, they haven't formulated the rules and they have yet to formulate. And they have reached the deadline to which they have to submit the rules, which they missed. So they went back to the committee and asked for extension, to which they were granted extension till April 9th. As I said earlier, without the rules being notified, the act remains ineffective. As of now, the CAA is dead in the water. Home Minister Amit Shah has said that CAA rules would be framed after COVID-19 vaccination drive ends. So, putting further question into the implementation of CAA, this statement plays a greater role into that. Coming to the next article, ECT fiasco, Indian envoy meets Mahinda Godbaya. So Sri Lanka backed out of agreement with India and Japan to develop the East Container Terminal at the Colombo port. So the Adani Group from India along with the Japanese companies was to invest in the project, expected up to a cost of 700 million as per official estimates. It's a joint venture between Japan companies and Indian companies. But the Sri Lanka at the last minute, without informing the governments of India and Japan and the companies that were involved in the project, pulled out of the agreement, stating that we are going to develop our port on our own with our own money, we don't need your money. This they did it because there was a wide scale protest from the employees and the unions that were working at the ECT terminal or port. This is the second instance of Sri Lanka revising an agreement or reversing on an agreement on large infrastructure project involving Japan. This after the government scrapped the 1.5 billion Japan funded light rail transit system last year. So this is not the first time that they have pulled out. This is the second time, because last year they cancelled a light rail transit system that they had agreed for construction with Japan. So things are not looking good as far as investments into Sri Lanka are concerned. As a peace offering, the Sri Lankan government offered West Corridor terminal to India for development, but West Corridor terminal is underdeveloped because the ECT, which is in its first stage and awaits upgradation, has a 450 meter long quay wall and water depth of 18 meters, equipping it to accommodate larger vessels. As far as the West Corridor terminal exists as a merely proposal with no infrastructure yet. So a 450 meter quay wall means a concrete wall to which large shipping containers or ships carrying shipping containers come and dock at. If you go to Google and search for port pictures, you will see a big concrete slab in water, to which one side there is water, the other side there is a concrete slab with cranes and the containers stored. That wall is called quay wall. That long concrete wall to which the ships go and stop at near, so that the cranes can come in and pick the cargo, is called quay wall. Coming to the next article, Jal Jeevan Mission Urban, which was announced in the yesterday's budget, will also include a component of rejuvenation of local water bodies. So the urban water supply mission, that is Jal Jeevan Mission Urban, that was announced on budget on Monday, will introduce or include rejuvenation of water bodies and 20% of water supply from reused water. So the mission would include rejuvenation of water bodies to boost the sustainable fresh water supply and creation of green spaces in the cities identified. So they said that we are going to rejuvenate water bodies that were neglected till now, and we will ensure that whatever the water supply city needs, 20% of that need will be fulfilled by these rejuvenated ponds or lakes here. Along with it, the ministry said that Metro Neo and Metro Light technologies, which are cheaper than conventional metros, will be considered in these particular cities. To build a large scale metro, it takes a lot of time and a lot of money. But Metro Neo and Metro Light will use existing infrastructure to implement metro technology or rapid transit. So Metro Neo and Metro Light technologies use currently existing infrastructure to improve or increase the rapid transport system in any state. That is what the government says, that we are going to implement not only metro projects, we are also going to implement Metro Neo and Metro Light projects in future cities. Thank you. Have a good day.